The morning bells from St. Mary's Church echoed through Millbrook's quiet streets as 24-year-old Ethan Bradley adjusted his badge for the third time. His hands trembled despite the crisp October air. The smell of fresh apple pies from Murphy's Diner mixed with the institutional scent of the police station ahead. First day nerves, he whispered to himself, though that wasn't the real reason his stomach twisted in knots. Ethan pushed through the glass doors of the Millbrook Police Department, his polished boots squeaking against the worn linoleum. 3 officers looked up from their desks, sizing him up with the casual indifference reserved for rookies. His pristine uniform stood out like a beacon among their weathered badges and faded patches. "You must be Bradley," the voice boomed from the back office before Captain Bill Morrison emerged, coffee mug in hand and 40 years of authority weighing down his shoulders. "Heard you were coming." "Yes, sir." Officer Ethan Bradley reporting for duty. His voice steadied, muscle memory from the academy taking over. Morrison circled him slowly, like a predator evaluating prey. "Fresh out of the academy, I see. Probably think you know everything about police work." "No, sir. Here to learn." Smart answer. Morrison's laugh carried no warmth. "This isn't Chicago or New York, kid. Millbrook's got its own way of doing things. You follow orders, keep your mouth shut, and maybe you'll last longer than the last rookie." The other officers exchanged glances. Jake Hernandez, a 10-year veteran with kind eyes and premature gray hair, offered a slight nod of encouragement. Detective Sarah Lou looked up briefly from her paperwork, her expression unreadable. "Sir, what happened to the last rookie?" Ethan asked. Morrison's smile turned cold. "Decided police work wasn't for him. Moved back to whatever suburb spawned him. Boys like you come and go, Bradley. Here, you're nothing but a rookie who needs to learn respect." The words hit harder than intended. Ethan had grown up visiting this town every summer with his grandmother. He'd played in these streets, bought penny candy from the corner store, attended church with Eleanor Bradley while his parents worked in the state capitol. But now he stood as a stranger, carrying secrets that could destroy everything he'd once loved about this place. "Hernandez, show the rookie around. Start him on parking violations. Maybe directing traffic will teach him the basics." Morrison disappeared back into his office, dismissing Ethan like an afterthought. Jake approached with a sympathetic expression. "Don't take it personal. Morrison's hard on everyone at first." "Thanks." Ethan managed a weak smile. "Guess everyone needs to prove themselves." "That's the truth. Come on, I'll show you where everything is." As Jake led him through the station, pointing out equipment lockers and briefing rooms, Ethan's trained eye cataloged everything. The evidence room looked disorganized. Officers seemed unusually familiar with local business owners who stopped by with coffee and donuts. Small things that might mean nothing, or everything. His phone buzzed with a text from his grandmother. "First day going well, sweetheart." He typed back, "Learning the ropes. Love you." What he couldn't tell her was that every instinct screamed this place harbored secrets. Dark ones. The kind that had convinced Mayor Richard Thompson to send his own son undercover, risking everything on the hope that an honest cop could uncover the truth without getting destroyed in the process. Morrison's voice echoed from his office. "Bradley, parking duty starts now. Hope you're ready to earn your keep." Ethan grabbed his citation book and headed for the door, knowing his real work was just beginning. 3 hours of writing parking tickets taught Ethan nothing except that Millbrook citizens paid their meters religiously. Too religiously. In most towns, expired meters were easy money. Here, cars moved with suspicious punctuality, as if everyone knew exactly when enforcement happened. "Ready for real patrol?" Jake appeared beside the municipal building, keys jingling. "Oh, Morrison wants you riding with me this week." Ethan climbed into the passenger seat of Unit 7, inhaling the familiar smell of coffee, aftershave, and uncertainty that marked every police car he'd ever known. Jake pulled onto Main Street, past the hardware store where Ethan had bought fishing line with his grandmother, past the library where she'd read him stories about brave knights and honest heroes. "So where are you from originally?" Jake asked, turning toward the residential district. "Up north. Small town, like this one." "Family." Ethan's throat tightened. "Grandmother raised me mostly. Parents worked a lot. The lie came easier than expected. Mayor Thompson and his wife had agreed on the cover story months ago. Ethan Bradley, orphaned young, raised by his grandmother Eleanor in Minnesota, no local connections. Clean background, clean motives, clean conscience, good people, grandmothers." Jake nodded toward a white house with green shutters. "Mrs. Patterson lives there. Calls about her neighbor's dog twice a week." Never actually file the complaints, if you know what I mean. Ethan didn't know what he meant, but Jake's tone suggested he should. They drove past Marcelli's bar, where Tony Marcelli waved from the doorway. Jake waved back, slowing the car. Good guy, Tony. Understands community policing. What's community policing mean here? Jake glanced at him sideways. Means we work with people instead of against them. Sometimes that requires flexibility. The word, flexibility, sent ice through Ethan's veins. In police training, flexibility usually meant compromise. Compromise usually meant corruption. Like what kind of flexibility? You'll learn. Jake turned down Elm Street. Every town's got its own rhythm. You fight it, you make enemies. You work with it, everybody wins. That evening, Ethan sat in his sparse apartment on the edge of town, surrounded by his grandmother's photographs and his police academy certificates. The only other furniture was a card table, 2 folding chairs, and a mattress on the floor. He'd wanted nothing that looked permanent, nothing that suggested he planned to stay. From his glove compartment, he retrieved a small notebook disguised as a maintenance log. His first entry would determine everything that followed. Day 1, he wrote. Jake Hernandez, 10-year veteran. References, flexibility, and community policing, in context that suggests accommodation of minor violations. Tony Marcelli appears to have friendly relationship with police beyond normal business owner interactions. Morrison's dismissive attitude toward rookies may be standard intimidation or protective of department culture. Mrs. Patterson's complaint system potentially indicates selective enforcement. He stared at the words, realizing how clinical they sounded compared to the growing knot in his stomach. Everything he'd feared might be true, and he was completely alone in this fight. 3 weeks of parking tickets and routine patrols had lulled Ethan into thinking maybe he'd been wrong. Maybe Millbrook was just a sleepy town where cops waved at bartenders and flexibility meant letting teenagers off with warnings. Then he saw the money change hands. Wait in the car, Jake said, pulling behind Marcelli's bar. Routine inspection? Back in 5 minutes. Through the side mirror, Ethan watched Jake disappear around the building's corner. The afternoon sun cast long shadows between the dumpsters and delivery trucks. Everything looked normal until Tony Marcelli emerged from the back door, glancing left and right before approaching Jake. The conversation lasted 30 seconds. Tony handed Jake an envelope. Jake pocketed it without looking inside. They shook hands like old friends completing a business transaction. Ethan's academy training screamed at him to act, document, report, intervene. But his real mission demanded patience, evidence, proof of systematic corruption, not just one officer's mistake. Jake returned with a casual smile. All good. Tony keeps a clean establishment. What was in the envelope? Inspection report. Standard paperwork. Jake started the engine. Sometimes business owners prefer hand delivery instead of mail. The lie sat between them like poison gas. Ethan nodded, hating himself for the complicity, hating Jake for forcing him to choose between justice and truth. That night, he sat outside his grandmother's old house, now occupied by strangers. His phone felt heavy in his hands. Ethan, sweetheart, how's my favorite police officer? Her voice broke something inside him. It's harder than I expected, Grandma. What kind of harder? Just adjustment challenges. Small-town policing is different from what they taught in the academy. Are you staying true to yourself? The question hit like a punch. Trying to. Sometimes the right path isn't clear immediately, honey. But if you remember why you wanted to help people in the first place, you'll find your way. After hanging up, he wrote in his hidden journal, direct observation of financial exchange between Officer Hernandez and Tony Marcelli during alleged routine inspection, amount unknown, need to determine frequency and pattern. The words looked so clinical, so removed from the crushing weight of watching a good man compromise everything he'd sworn to protect. The domestic violence call came at 2:47 p.m. on a Tuesday. Mrs. Patterson's neighbor wasn't complaining about dogs this time. Detective Sarah Lou was already on scene when Ethan and Jake arrived, her small frame commanding the front porch like she owned it. The husband sat on the steps, hands cuffed behind his back, while Sarah knelt beside a woman with a split lip and fear in her eyes. Mrs. Davis, you don't have to decide right now, Sarah said softly, but I want you to know your options. Ethan watched her work, noting how she documented everything, photographed the scene from multiple angles, and spoke to the victim with genuine compassion rather than procedural detachment. When Jake suggested they let family matters work themselves out, Sarah's glare could have frozen water. "Officer Bradley, can you help me with evidence collection?" Sarah asked, pointedly excluding Jake from the request. They worked in efficient silence, Sarah's thoroughness impressive. She treated each bruise like it mattered, each broken picture frame like evidence in a murder case. Later, in the station's break room, they found themselves alone with bitter coffee and flickering fluorescent lights. Sarah stirred sugar into her cup, studying Ethan over the rim. "You document everything," she observed. "Seems important." "It is. Not everyone sees it that way." She paused. "Chicago taught me that departmental politics can complicate good police work." Ethan felt the weight of her words. Maintaining integrity in challenging environments isn't always straightforward. Sarah's eyes sharpened. Both recognized something in the other, a shared understanding that justice and procedure didn't always align perfectly in the real world. "Hope that's not the case here," she said, leaving the break room. But her tone suggested she already suspected otherwise. Delivering routine reports to Morrison's office should have been simple. Drop the papers, leave, pretend he belonged here. But Morrison's door stood slightly ajar, the captain nowhere in sight, and Ethan's curiosity proved stronger than his caution. The invoices scattered across Morrison's desk caught his attention immediately. Riverside Construction Company, the same name he'd seen mentioned during Jake's conversations with local business owners. The same company that seemed to win every municipal contract despite consistently higher bids. Ethan glanced toward the hallway, then stepped closer. The paperwork told a story of systematic fraud that made his stomach drop. Construction permits expedited for companies providing consulting fees, contract approvals rubber-stamped without proper bidding processes. A coordinated network where money flowed upward through city officials like water finding its level. This wasn't corruption. This was organized crime wearing badges and city council seats. His hands shook as he photographed each document with his phone, knowing that discovery meant certain death or disappearance. The amounts were staggering, hundreds of thousands of dollars moving through shell companies and municipal accounts. The final document in the stack made his blood freeze. Arwan Thompson, approved for expedited processing. His father's signature, clear as daylight, authorizing a construction project that violated every bidding regulation in the state code. Either Mayor Richard Thompson was the kingpin of Millbrook's corruption network, or he was being manipulated by people who knew exactly how to use his authority against him. Ethan photographed the signature with trembling fingers, realizing that saving the town might require destroying his own family. Sleep became impossible. Ethan spent the night driving empty streets, past the city hall where his father's office window glowed at 2 a.m. Was Richard Thompson working late on legitimate business, or coordinating the next phase of municipal theft? The next morning brought Morrison's increased scrutiny. During briefing, the captain's eyes lingered on Ethan longer than necessary, as if sensing something different about the young officer. "Bradley, you're being reassigned to school crossing duty, effective immediately." Morrison's smile was predatory. "Maybe directing traffic will teach you proper respect." The isolation was strategic. No more ride-alongs with Jake. No more exposure to ongoing corruption activities. Just 8 hours of helping children cross streets while the real crimes happened elsewhere. Jake found him during lunch break, looking haggard and desperate. "My daughter needs another surgery," he said quietly. "Insurance won't cover experimental treatments." "I'm sorry. Sometimes good people do bad things for good reasons," Jake continued. "Remember that before you judge anyone in this town." Ethan watched Jake walk away, understanding perfectly. A dying child justified anything. Mortgage payments excused evidence tampering. Medical bills made heroes into criminals. The corruption network wasn't just stealing money. It was feeding on desperation, turning decent people into accomplices by making survival dependent on participation. Exposing the truth might save the town's soul, but it would destroy every family caught in the web of necessity and compromise. Murphy's Diner felt like a refuge from the station's oppressive atmosphere. The smell of fresh apple pie and coffee created normalcy that Ethan desperately needed. He sat in a corner booth, picking at his sandwich, when Sarah slid into the seat across from him. "Mind if I join you?" "Free country." She ordered coffee and pie, her movements casual but her eyes alert. "Unnoticed you've been relegated to crossing guard duty. Morrison thinks I need to learn respect, or he thinks you're seeing things you shouldn't." Sarah stirred sugar into her coffee. "I've been conducting my own review of departmental procedures, finding irregularities that remind me of Chicago." Ethan's pulse quickened. What kind of irregularities? Pattern recognition, money flows, evidence handling procedures that don't match standard protocols. She leaned forward slightly. I have contacts at the federal level who specialize in hypothetical corruption scenarios. Hypothetical? Until they become real. Sarah slid a business card across the table. My friend at the FBI. She handles municipal corruption cases, just in case we ever need to discuss situations that might require outside intervention. Ethan pocketed the card, feeling the weight of potential salvation. What made you trust me? The way you handled the Davis domestic call. The way you document everything. The way Morrison treats you like a threat. Sarah's smile was grim. Takes one to know one. Their partnership was forming, built on shared principles and mutual recognition of danger. Morrison's office felt smaller than usual, crowded with decades of commendations and photographs with local politicians. The captain sat behind his desk like a judge pronouncing sentence. Someone's been asking questions around town, Morrison said, not looking up from his paperwork. Questions about department procedures, evidence handling, things that don't concern rookie officers. Ethan kept his expression neutral. Sorry, sir. Officers who don't fit in find themselves in dangerous situations. Morrison's smile was cold. Traffic accidents, equipment malfunctions. Sometimes good cops get hurt because they're not careful enough. I'll be more careful. See that you are. Morrison leaned back. Accidents happen to careless officers, Bradley. Hope you're more careful than you've been lately. The threat hung in the air like smoke. Ethan left the office knowing he was marked. 2 days later, his patrol car's brakes failed on Miller's Hill. Pumping the pedal frantically, he managed to steer into a cornfield instead of the traffic below. The mechanic found nothing obviously wrong, but the timing felt too convenient. Sarah's situation deteriorated simultaneously. Someone searched my locker, she told him during their next diner meeting. Went through my desk files. Nothing stolen, just reorganized. Message received, loud and clear. Sarah's coffee sat untouched, growing cold. We're running out of time before they make their next move. The corruption network was fighting back, and they were caught in the crosshairs. Jake found him after midnight behind the municipal building. Desperation carved into every line of his face. I need to tell someone before I lose my mind. Jake's voice cracked. They want me to tamper with evidence. Drug case. Big dealer walks free if I make some cocaine disappear from the evidence locker. Jake, don't. My daughter's dying. Tears streamed down the veteran officer's cheeks. Insurance won't cover the experimental treatment. It costs more than I make in 3 years. They're offering enough money to save her life. Ethan's world collapsed. Stopping this specific crime might save one case but would expose his investigation before he could address the larger network. Let it happen, and an innocent child gets medical care while a drug dealer escapes justice. There's other ways. There aren't. Jake wiped his eyes. You think I haven't tried everything? This is what Morrison's people do. They find your weakness and squeeze until you break. Later, Ethan learned his father was facing similar pressure. A major construction project requiring mayoral approval. Threats about campaign funding. Political survival balanced against moral compromise. Richard Thompson wasn't the mastermind. He was another victim. Alone in his apartment, staring at his reflection in the bathroom mirror. Ethan questioned everything. What if I'm not strong enough to see this through? What if good people get destroyed because I'm not brave enough? The weight of impossible choices was crushing him, and he didn't know if he had the strength to carry on. The 24-hour coffee shop on Route 9 cast neon shadows across 3 faces huddled in the back booth. Agent Diana Foster arrived exactly at midnight, her federal credentials hidden but her authority unmistakable. Sarah briefed me on the situation. Foster said quietly, "We can move fast, but we need internal cooperation." Ethan took a deep breath. "My name isn't just Ethan Bradley. I'm Richard Thompson's son." Sarah's coffee cup stopped halfway to her lips. "The mayor? He sent me undercover. Suspected corruption but needed proof." Ethan met her shocked gaze. "I should have told you sooner. You're the mayor's son." Sarah's voice carried anger and understanding in equal measure. "Jesus, Ethan. That's why this works," Foster interrupted. "Internal access plus federal authority. We can protect people like Jake while ensuring the guilty face justice." Sarah processed the revelation, her detective mind calculating advantages. "Your position gives us leverage we didn't have before." "Exactly." Foster spread documents across the table. "Coordinated operation. Official federal investigation proceeds while Ethan continues gathering internal evidence. Sarah coordinates between local and federal law enforcement. Timeline? Ethan asked. 72 hours to gather final evidence before we move. Foster's expression was grim. After that, there's no going back for any of us. Ethan felt the weight of leadership settling on his shoulders. No more conflicted observer. Time to become the leader this fight required. Part 10. The Decision Point. The 24-hour coffee shop on Route 9 cast neon shadows across three faces huddled in the back booth. Agent Diana Foster arrived exactly at midnight, her federal credentials hidden, but her authority unmistakable. Sarah briefed me on the situation, Foster said quietly. We can move fast, but we need internal cooperation. Ethan took a deep breath. My name isn't just Ethan Bradley. I'm Richard Thompson's son. Sarah's coffee cup stopped halfway to her lips. The mayor. He sent me undercover, suspected corruption but needed proof. Ethan met her shocked gaze. I should have told you sooner. You're the mayor's son. Sarah's voice carried anger and understanding in equal measure. Jesus, Ethan. That's why this works. Foster interrupted. Internal access plus federal authority. We can protect people like Jake while ensuring the guilty face justice. Sarah processed the revelation, her detective mind calculating advantages. Your position gives us leverage we didn't have before. Exactly. Foster spread documents across the table. Coordinated operation. Official federal investigation proceeds while Ethan continues gathering internal evidence. Sarah coordinates between local and federal law enforcement. Timeline? Ethan asked. 72 hours to gather final evidence before we move. Foster's expression was grim. After that, there's no going back for any of us. Ethan felt the weight of leadership settling on his shoulders. No more conflicted observer. Time to become the leader this fight required. Founders Day transformed Central Park into a Norman Rockwell painting. Children ran between food vendors while their parents chatted beneath colorful banners celebrating Millbrook's 150th anniversary. The bandstand overlooked families spreading picnic blankets, their laughter mixing with the aroma of funnel cakes and barbecue. Morrison approached the microphone with the confidence of a man who owned the town. Mayor Thompson sat on the platform behind him, scheduled to speak after Morrison's special announcement about departmental excellence. Citizens of Millbrook, Morrison began, his voice carrying across the park. Today, we celebrate not just our history, but our commitment to maintaining the highest standards in law enforcement. Ethan stood in his dress uniform near the crowd's edge, sensing the trap closing around him. Sarah positioned herself strategically by the park's main entrance. Agent Foster waited in an unmarked sedan beyond the tree line. Unfortunately, Morrison continued, maintaining those standards sometimes requires difficult decisions. Officer Bradley, please join me on the platform. Murmurs rippled through the crowd as Ethan walked forward, his footsteps loud on the wooden stairs. Morrison's smile was triumphant. Officer Bradley has been found unsuitable for law enforcement due to reliability issues and poor judgment. Morrison's voice boomed across the park. I'm requiring his immediate resignation. The crowd fell silent. Children stopped playing. Parents exchanged worried glances. Your badge and weapon, Bradley, now. Ethan reached for his badge, then stopped as Agent Foster emerged from the crowd, her federal credentials held high. Federal Bureau of Investigation, she announced. Captain Morrison, you're under arrest for conspiracy, fraud, and corruption. Morrison's face transformed from smugness to terror in 3 seconds. What the hell? Agent Foster, Ethan said clearly. I believe you'll find the evidence you need in Captain Morrison's office files, including documentation of the systematic extortion network he's been operating. The crowd gasped as understanding dawned. Morrison stared at Ethan with dawning horror. You little bastard, you've been doing his job. Mayor Thompson stepped forward, his voice carrying across the silent park. Ethan, I'm proud of you. Father and son embraced on the platform as federal agents moved through the crowd, arresting 3 city council members and 2 additional police officers. Morrison stood in handcuffs, watching his empire crumble around him. Ladies and gentlemen, Mayor Thompson addressed the crowd, I'd like you to meet my son, Officer Ethan Bradley, who risked his life to protect this community. The applause started slowly, then built to a thunder that echoed off the surrounding buildings. 2 months later, the morning bells of St. Mary's Church rang over a town learning to trust again. Ethan walked his beat down Main Street, greeting shopkeepers who now knew his full story and waved with genuine warmth instead of nervous politeness. "Morning, Officer Bradley," called Mrs. Patterson from her front porch. "How's your father doing?" "Good, Mrs. Patterson. City council meeting tonight. Public's invited." The transparency protocols were working. Every municipal contract now required public bidding. Every police action generated documented reports available for citizen review. Captain Sarah Liu had restructured the department from top to bottom, her Chicago experience proving invaluable in rebuilding institutional trust. Jake emerged from Murphy's diner, coffee in hand and relief in his eyes. The Federal Victim Compensation Fund had covered his daughter's experimental treatment completely. She was responding well, and Jake was completing counseling sessions while maintaining his badge under Sarah's supervision. "How's Emma?" Ethan asked. "Stronger every day. Doctor says the treatment's working." Jake's smile was genuine for the first time in months. "Thank you for not giving up on me. Good people deserve second chances." At the police station, Sarah reviewed the morning briefings with the efficiency that had made her the unanimous choice for captain. The federal investigation had resulted in 7 convictions, including Morrison's 15-year sentence. Riverside Construction was disbanded, its assets seized to compensate victims of the fraud network. "Community oversight meeting tonight," Sarah reminded Ethan. "Citizens want progress updates on the new protocols. They'll get them." That afternoon, Eleanor Bradley stepped off the Greyhound bus, her silver hair gleaming in the autumn sunlight. Ethan swept her into a hug that contained months of secrets finally shared. "My brave boy," she whispered. "I always knew you'd find your way to the right thing. You taught me well." They walked past the bandstand where everything had changed, toward Murphy's diner, where apple pie waited and the future looked brighter than either had dared hope. The town was healing, slowly but surely, building something better on the ruins of what had been corrupt. In his pocket, Ethan carried a new notebook, not for secrets this time, but for community suggestions, citizen complaints, and the ongoing work of earning back trust one honest day at a time. The real work was just beginning, but for the first time since arriving in Millbrook, Ethan faced it without fear.